There is a place on earth so cruel that it devours every ambition, every hope, a place where man is just an infinitesimal speck in the face of glacial fury. In the heart of 1914, as Europe burned in the flames of war, one man looked out across another frozen horizon. Ernest Shackleton, the legendary explorer, sought not glory on the battlefield, but the conquest of the last unconquered bastion of our world, Antarctica. His mission? To cross the frozen continent for the first time, from sea to sea, a titanic undertaking that would seal his name in history forever. He set out aboard his ship, the Endurance, a sturdy steam and sailboat built to withstand the harshest ice. What should have been a glorious crossing instead became an unprecedented odyssey of survival, a story that will make you question the limits of human endurance. It was early August 1914 when the Endurance sailed from Plymouth. On board, besides Shackleton, there were 27 men and 70 sled dogs. Morale was high, the excitement palpable. The goal was ambitious, almost crazy, to be the first to set foot on Antarctica and cross it. A race against time and against nature itself. The beginning was promising. The Endurance was sailing quickly towards the icy waters. But Shackleton was a man who knew the pole. He knew that Antarctica was unforgiving, that beneath its breathtaking beauty lurked a destructive force. On December 5th, after calling at South Georgia, the ship left the last civilized outpost and plunged into the icy embrace of the Southern Ocean. Conditions began to deteriorate rapidly. The ice, initially fragmented, became increasingly thicker, forming an implacable grip. On January 19, 1915, the inevitable happened. The Endurance ran aground. The ship, built to endure, was now a prisoner. It wasn't the first time a ship had been trapped, but this time was different. The ice floe wouldn't let her go. In the days and weeks that followed, the hope that the ice would part and free the Endurance slowly faded into a cruel illusion. The sailors, even under Shackleton's reassuring guidance, watched helplessly as their powerful vessel was transformed into a plaything at the mercy of unimaginable forces. The pressure of the ice, slow and inexorable, began to make the ship's hull groan. Each day, new, terrifying creaks resounded through the sheet metal, sinister warnings of impending doom. The routine on board became a nerve-wracking wait, punctuated by the sound of the ice gliding, almost as if it had a life of its own. Shackleton, with his inimitable calm, tried to keep morale high, organizing ice football matches and dog sled races, trying to distract the men from the harsh reality that surrounded them. But the reality was there, palpable. The ice, with its monumental strength, was slowly tightening its grip. On October 24, 1915, after nearly 10 months of captivity, nature revealed its true intentions. The pack ice, with a violent explosion, moved as a single gigantic entity, crushing the Endurance between two enormous sheets of ice. The wood gave way with a deafening crash. The beam snapped, the hull warped as if it were made of paper. The freezing water began to invade the ship. Shackleton, his heart in his throat, gave the order: abandon ship. The Endurance, their home and their only hope, was doomed. Within days, he slumped to one side, a wounded giant surrendering to his fate. On November 21st, swallowed by the icy waters, the Endurance disappeared beneath the ice, leaving the men alone, more than 1,000 miles from any sign of civilization. Without a ship, their crossing was impossible, but the fight for survival had only just begun. With the ship lost, the expedition turned into an odyssey of pure survival. 28 men, isolated in a white desert, with temperatures touching -30 degrees and the wind whipping wildly. Their only shelter was makeshift tents, constructed from what they had managed to salvage from the ship, and 3 lifeboats. Shackleton saw it with his incredible leadership, instituted a rigorous regime. Food rations were minimal. They hunted seals and penguins, whose meat, fat, and blood provided essential nourishment for survival. Every day was a battle against the biting cold, the gnawing hunger, and the despair that tried to creep into men's hearts. The ice floe, unstable and unpredictable, was their only terrain, but it was constantly shifting, setting them adrift. Months passed, each day the same as the last in his grueling struggle. The men's morale was fragile, but Shackleton's constant reassuring presence, his unshakable optimism, was their lifeline. It was he who decided every move, resolved every dispute, instilled courage when it seemed there was none left. After months of drifting at the mercy of the ice, the exhausted crew finally managed to reach Elephant Island, a small, desolate, and inhospitable island. It was dry land, yes, but it was not salvation. The island was a veritable rock in the middle of the ocean, devoid of resources and far from any shipping lane. The hope of being discovered is almost non-existent. It was at this point, in one of his most desperate moments, that Shackleton made the boldest and perhaps the craziest decision of his entire career. He knew no one would come looking for them there. The only option was to go and get help. He decided to attempt an impossible crossing aboard one of the lifeboats to reach South Georgia, a whaling station more than 800 miles away across one of the world's stormiest oceans. On 24th April 1916, Shackleton, along with five other men chosen for their stamina and skill, set sail in the James Caird, a 20-foot longboat, roughly adapted for open sea conditions. The crossing was a real hell. The Southern Ocean lashed out at them with monstrous waves, as high as buildings, and winds that threatened to capsize the small vessel at any moment. The cold was so intense that the splashed water froze immediately, creating a crust of ice that made the boat heavy and unstable. Food was rationed to the extreme, thirst was a constant torment, and sleep an impossible luxury. But Shackleton's determination was granite. With his compass and the experience of a veteran of the seas, he navigated through the storm day after day, night after night, always with one thought: to save his men. After 16 days of this agony, an eternity that would have broken any man, the James Caird reached the shores of South Georgia. But their odyssey was not over yet. They had landed on the wrong side of the island, opposite the whaling station at Grytviken, and an impassable mountain range stood between them and safety. Three of the men were too weak to continue. Shackleton, with two other companions, faced a final exhausting march across unexplored mountains and glaciers, a crossing without maps, without mountaineering equipment, driven only by an iron will. After 36 hours of uninterrupted walking, exhausted, covered in mud and ice, but victorious, they finally arrived at Grytviken. The sight of the whaling ships anchored in the harbor, the smoke rising from the chimneys, the smell of cooking food, were like a mirage coming true. The civilized world had returned. But the joy was short-lived, because now the most important mission began: saving the men remaining on Elephant Island. Shackleton did not waste a single minute. He immediately organized a rescue mission, but the first three, due to ice and bad weather conditions, failed. Desperation grew. Every day spent on that island meant less chance of survival for his men. But Shackleton did not give up. He couldn't, not after everything they'd been through. His perseverance was admirable, almost obsessive. Finally, on the fourth attempt, on 30th August 1916, with a small Chilean tug, the Yelcho, Shackleton succeeded in reaching Elephant Island. The image that presented itself to his eyes was heartbreaking. The men, emaciated and covered in filth, almost unrecognizable, were there waiting perched on the shore, their gaze lost in the horizon. They had resisted for over 4 months in unimaginable conditions, living under an upturned boat, feeding on penguins and seals, tormented by the cold and loneliness. When Shackleton landed, his first thought was to ask, "Is everyone all right?" And the answer was an emotional yes. After nearly 2 years of frozen hell, unimaginable fears, and a daily struggle against death, every single man had been saved. Not one was lost, not one perished in that mad odyssey. The scientific mission had failed. The crossing of the continent had not taken place. The ship was lost, but Shackleton had accomplished something infinitely greater. He had demonstrated that true victory is not conquering territory, but saving lives. The Endurance's Odyssey is much more than a story of failed exploration. It is a hymn to human resilience, a testament to the strength of spirit in the face of the most brutal adversity. It is the story of a captain who, through his exemplary leadership, his unwavering courage, and his unwavering faith in his men, transformed what should have been a catastrophe into one of the greatest survival triumphs of all time. Shackleton did not conquer Antarctica on that voyage, but he did conquer something far more precious: the eternal respect and admiration of having brought every single member of his crew home after 2 years of glacial hell. His legacy is a beacon of hope, a reminder that even in the most desperate situations, with the right guidance and unwavering determination, man can overcome the impossible. If this story of courage and resilience has touched you, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on other incredible adventures from the past.